My name is Dalton McCauley, and the article of study that I was assigned was Biodegradable Polymer Scaffolds. As you can see in the bottom left corner of this image, this topic is more focused on the biomedical engineering field, but it can be used in many different applications that are beneficial to real world today. The key question addressed here is, what is the best type of 3D printing process for this application and why? 3D printing, as we know, is very popular in today's day and age, and it's popular because it has the ability to produce complex architectures. There are many different types of 3D printing. For example, light-assisted 3D printing, selective laser sintering, fused deposition modeling, or FDM, and the most popular for this application is melt-based 3D printing. However, melt-based 3D printing has limitations that point to a need for new methods that do not rely on temperature and enable printing with high resolution and a wider range of polymer chemistries. Therefore, solvent cast 3D printing has emerged as a promising alternative to melt-based approaches. This can be performed at room temperature and used with polymers with processing temperatures that are not suitable for existing melt-based 3D printers. For example, polyaniline and polysulfone have both been printed successfully with solvent cast 3D printing. So the three images at the bottom show the process of solvent cast 3D printing and how it's done, as well as what scaffolds look like in association with this. As far as the methodology goes, the model used for this study was simply just 3D printed polymer scaffolds. That's what was modeled as well as studied. Print pressure, print speed, and ink properties were all tested to determine the print fidelity. All of this is related to the volumetric flow of the ink. Polymer concentration requires changes to print pressure and print speed to compensate for the changes in ink properties. Scaffold morphology and ink viscosity were both part of the material performance index to be tested and see how they affect all of the things listed above. The materials that were surveyed were three main different types of thermoplastic polymers. As listed, they were PCl, PLA, and PLGA, and the advantages and disadvantages to use those as inks were tested. The images to the right show the chemistries behind all of the inks, PCl being at the top, PLA in the middle, and PLGA at the bottom. Study 1 mainly was testing the morphology and how print fidelity was determined with the three different types of polymers. The shape fidelity was improved at print pressures and print speeds that enabled fast solvent evaporation. Higher print pressures resulted in a larger amount of ink volume extruded, which required more time for solvent evaporation. This resulted in a flattened filament shape, as you can see in Figure 1. Lower print speeds also increased the total volume extruded and produced flattened morphologies, as seen in Figure 2. Reducing the volume coming out of the needle by decreasing print pressure or increasing print speed successfully produced consistent cylindrical morphologies. However, the lower print pressures and higher print speeds caused the filament to lose contact with the substrate. This initial study, as shown on this slide, was all focused on the effects of PCl. However, both PLA and PLGA at the same pressure and same print speed were tested. The filaments produced with these two polymers resulted in larger diameters, and they were statistically different from each other regarding the difference between PLA, PLGA, and PCl. It's important to note that the PLGA and PLA inks both produced filaments with roundness values of 0.85 or higher, which indicated successful shape fidelity, and these showed no statistical differences from one another. The results of this study confirm that the relationship between ink viscosity and print parameters can be applied to reduce optimization steps and parameterize space to achieve reproducible structures with solvent cast printing. The effects of PLA are shown in Figure 7, Parts C and D, and the images in A and B show a microscopical structure of what the scaffold looks like up close. And as you can see, there is little to no statistical differences between the PLGA and the PLA. The Study 2 showed the effects of ink concentration on viscosity. The viscosity was measured of PLGA and PLA inks with different polymer concentration using rheology. And it found that increasing polymer concentration resulted in a higher viscosity across all shear rates as shown here in Figure 6. The negative log-log trend lines showed shear thinning behavior for both polymers at all concentrations. This shows a good relationship and showed that ink viscosity increased with increasing PCl concentration at all shear rates, and PLGA and PLA inks had viscosities similar to that of PCl. As expected, an increase in shear rate resulted in a decrease in the process-related apparent viscosity for PCl. Although the values were within a standard deviation, the process-related apparent viscosity appeared to be higher than the measured viscosity at all shear rates. The variation was likely due to two key assumptions made in the volumetric flow calculations when converting the mass to volume. The first assumption is that the extruded ink was a perfect cylinder, and the second assumption is that the actual polymer concentration in the ink matched the intended concentration. Figure 3 and Figure 4 show the log shear rate effects for different values of PCl at different ink concentrations. To summarize this study, it's important to see that SCP offers an exciting method to construct scaffolds with high resolution and complicated architectures. Solvent cast printing can be used with polymers that are not capable with traditional melt-based techniques. Traditional melt-based techniques require processing temperatures and pressures that are high enough to achieve continuous flow, which limits the type of polymer that can be printed. Therefore, SCP is the clear outlier with many key takeaways as to why it should be tested with more polymers. The versatility of solvent cast printing proves it to be the best way of printing biodegradable polymer scaffolds. This article was overall a 9 out of 10. It was very useful and the quality of research was overall very well. It can be expanded quickly if more polymers are tested, such as nylon to nylon 6, to expand the polymer library that can be successfully printed, repeated, and reproduced using solvent cast 3D printing. God, dude, I just